Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about circadian rhythm. No, circadian rhythm. It comes from circa diem, or a round a day, and refers to rhythmic changes in animal behavior with a 24-hour period. So for example, most humans wake up in the morning and go to sleep at night. And even Harvard students have an internal clock guiding their sleep-wake cycle. It's just a little out of sync with the outside world. You see, our internal clock is endogenous, which means internal. It keeps ticking whether we see the sun or not. That makes sense, because if your body just woke you up when it was light or put you to sleep when it was dark, for one thing, people wouldn't get jet lag. And research shows that if you keep a cricket or a mouse or a college student in a room with no natural light, they still fall asleep and wake up regularly. Except the human internal clock runs a little bit slow, closer to a 25-hour cycle, so they start getting out of sync with everyone else. That brings me to our second point. Our internal clock is also entrainable, which means it synchronizes to the day-night cycle via certain environmental cues. These are called Zeitgebers, which is German for time giver, and they're things like sunlight and temperature that tell what's in here, what time it is out there. To understand how that information gets into you to set your internal clock, let's first talk about the clock itself. Just like a grandfather clock keeps time using the back and forth swinging of a pendulum, your body keeps time by using the on and off expression of genes, what's called a genetic oscillator. We keep ours in the suprachiasmatic nucleus, two clusters of neurons found right about here, and it works like this. You have two genes, the clock gene and the BMAL1 gene. Left to their own devices, these genes produce lots of proteins, and these proteins go out and do things to nearby neurons that make them release hormones, which cause alertness, hunger, and all those things that happen when you're awake. But the proteins also find 5 other genes, 3 period genes and 2 cryptochrome genes, and make them produce a bunch of proteins of their own. As these feedback proteins build up, they go back and stop production of both the original proteins and themselves. By the time they're done, it should be about nighttime, and neuron activity slows down. After enough time for a good night's sleep, the feedback proteins break down, and the whole cycle starts over again. So where do the Zeitgebers come into all of this? Well, as you may have noticed, the suprachiasmatic nucleus is in the hypothalamus, which is connected to the retina of the eye by the retinohypothalamic tract. There are 3 types of light-sensitive cells in our retinas: rods, cones, and intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs. We see with rods and cones, but IPRGCs are different. They're sensitive to natural light, but they don't tell you what it looks like. Instead, they record its intensity and report it to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which responds by changing the amount of feedback proteins floating around. So, for example, if your brain is telling you that it's early morning, but your eyes tell it that there's lots of bright sunshine outside, it will produce more feedback proteins, and you'll go to sleep earlier. That's the hope, anyway. And there you have it. A complex but elegant system, built up over millions of years of evolutionary history, there to guide us through the cycles of day and night on this planet we call home.